The wind carried red dust across the vast expanse of Wyoming territory, coating everything in a fine layer of earth that spoke of drought and hardship. Sarah Mackenzie stood at the edge of her weathered porch, squinting against the late afternoon sun that painted the distant mountains in shades of amber and rust. It was 1873, and the frontier town of Cedar Ridge sprawled before her like a collection of matchsticks thrown carelessly across the prairie. Her small cabin sat at the town's edge, where civilization met wilderness. The wood had grayed with age and weather, matching the weariness that had settled into her bones since Thomas died 2 winters past. At 24, she was already a widow, already worn by loss and the harsh judgment of those who whispered behind flour sacks at Morrison's general store. The townspeople had their opinions about a young woman living alone. Some pitied her. Most scorned her. Mrs. Abigail Patterson, the banker's wife, had made it clear last Sunday after church service. A proper woman would have returned east to her family. It's unseemly, Sarah, this stubborn independence of yours. But Sarah had no family back east, no welcoming arms to embrace her grief. Only this cabin that Thomas had built with his own hands, and the meager living she scraped together taking in washing and mending for the miners and ranchers who passed through Cedar Ridge. The September heat pressed down like a heavy blanket, and Sarah wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. She needed firewood before nightfall. The nights grew cold quickly in the high country, and her supply was running dangerously low. Tomorrow she would venture into the foothills to gather what she could find. As darkness crept across the prairie, Sarah retreated inside, barring the door against both the wilderness and the judgment of Cedar Ridge. Through the single window, she watched the first stars emerge, feeling the familiar ache of loneliness that had become her constant companion. Morning came with a spectacular sunrise that painted the sky in brilliant streaks of pink and gold. Sarah hitched up her faded brown skirts and set out early, hoping to avoid the scorching midday heat. She carried only a rope for bundling wood and a knife at her belt. Thomas's knife, its handle worn smooth by his calloused hands. The path to the foothills wound through sagebrush and scattered pines. Sarah had walked it many times, but never quite grew accustomed to the raw beauty of this untamed land. Eagles circled overhead, their cries echoing off the canyon walls. In the distance, she could see the sacred mountains the Lakota called Paha Sapa, though the white settlers had begun calling them the Black Hills. She was deep in thought, calculating how much wood she could carry, when her world exploded into chaos. A mountain lion dropped from an overhead ledge, landing directly in her path. Sarah's blood turned to ice as the creature fixed its yellow eyes on her. Muscles coiled like springs beneath its tawny coat. She backed away slowly, hand fumbling for Thomas's knife, knowing it would be useless against such a predator. The cat stalked forward, and Sarah stumbled over a root, falling hard onto her back. The lion gathered itself to spring, and she closed her eyes, waiting for the end. The sharp crack of a rifle split the air. Sarah's eyes flew open to see the mountain lion collapse mid-leap, its body hitting the ground mere feet from where she lay. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she scrambled backward, unable to process what had happened. A figure emerged from the tree line. A man, but unlike any from Cedar Ridge. He moved with the fluid grace of someone born to this wilderness, his movements as natural as the wind through the pines. His skin was the color of burnished copper, his hair black as a moonless night, falling past his shoulders in the traditional way of the Lakota. He wore buckskin leggings and a shirt decorated with intricate beadwork, a rifle held loosely in his hands. Sarah knew she should be afraid. Everything she'd been told about the savage Indians should have sent her running. But something in his eyes, dark and calm as a deep pool, held her still. He approached the fallen lion first, speaking words in his language that sounded like a prayer, before turning his attention to her. "You are hurt?" His English was accented but clear, his voice deep and measured. Sarah realized she was still on the ground, staring up at him like a startled deer. No, I'm not hurt." She accepted the hand he offered, surprised by its warmth and strength as he pulled her to her feet. "You saved my life." He studied her for a long moment, and Sarah became acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, her worn dress, her hair escaping from its pins, the poverty that clung to her like dust. But his gaze held no judgment, only a quiet assessment. The mountain cat was old, desperate. You were in its territory. He shouldered his rifle, preparing to leave. You should not walk alone here. Wait! The word escaped before Sarah could stop it. I haven't thanked you properly. My name is Sarah. Sarah Mackenzie. He paused, something flickering across his features. I am called Grey Wolf among my people. He gestured toward the dead lion. Take what you need from it. The hide will bring good money in your town. Sarah shook her head. I couldn't. It's yours by right. A slight smile touched his lips, the first break in his stoic expression. I have no need for money. You do. The truth of it stung, but Sarah couldn't deny it. Winter was coming, and the hide would indeed fetch a good price. Then, thank you, again. Grey Wolf nodded and turned to go, then stopped. The wood you seek is better to the east, where the lightning struck last summer. Dead wood. Dry. Burns well. He pointed through the trees. But do not come alone again. These hills grow more dangerous. Before Sarah could respond, he had melted back into the forest, moving with such quiet skill that within moments it was as if he had never been there at all. Only the dead mountain lion proved the encounter had been real. Sarah stood there for a long moment, her pulse still racing, though now for different reasons. She had just been saved by a Lakota warrior, one of the very people the town spoke of with such fear and hatred. Yet he had shown her more kindness in those few moments than most of Cedar Ridge had shown her in 2 years. She looked down at the mountain lion, then up at the path Grey Wolf had indicated. Practicality won over shock. She needed to get the hide back to town before scavengers found it, and she still needed firewood. But as she worked, skinning the animal with Thomas's knife, her mind kept returning to those dark eyes and the gentle strength in the warrior's hands. It wasn't until she was trudging back toward town, laden with wood and the rolled hide, that the full weight of what had happened settled on her. She had been saved by a Lakota warrior. She had spoken with him, taken his gift, felt gratitude rather than fear, and most troubling of all, she found herself hoping she would see him again. The sun was setting by the time Sarah reached the outskirts of Cedar Ridge, painting the ramshackle buildings in shades of gold and shadow. She could see people on the main street, going about their evening business. Soon she would have to face their stares, their whispers. Tomorrow she would have to explain the mountain lion hide, craft a story that didn't mention Grey Wolf. But tonight, as she secured her door and built up the fire with her newly gathered wood, Sarah allowed herself to remember every detail of the encounter. The way he had moved, the musical quality of his prayer over the fallen lion, the unexpected gentleness in his manner. Outside, the Wyoming wind howled its lonely song across the prairie. But for the first time in 2 years, Sarah Mackenzie felt something other than grief and isolation. It was a dangerous feeling, curiosity mixed with gratitude, colored by an attraction she didn't dare name. In a frontier town where hatred ran deep and laws were written in blood, such feelings could get her killed. But as she lay in her narrow bed, watching shadows dance on the rough-hewn walls, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the Lakota warrior who had emerged from the forest like a guardian spirit, saving her life and disappearing just as quickly. She didn't know that Grey Wolf stood on a distant ridge, looking down at the lights of Cedar Ridge, his own thoughts troubled by the encounter with the brave white woman who had looked at him without fear. He didn't know that their fates were now intertwined, bound by a moment of grace in a land that knew too little of such things. The first chapter of their story had been written in dust and blood and kindness. What would follow would test them both in ways neither could imagine, in a place where love was the most dangerous frontier of all. The October wind swept through Cedar Ridge like a harbinger of harder times to come. Sarah pulled her threadbare shawl tighter as she made her way down Main Street. A basket of freshly laundered clothes balanced on her hip. The mountain lion hide had brought good money, enough to buy flour and beans to last through November. but the townspeople's curiosity about how she'd acquired it had been relentless. "Morning, Widow Mackenzie," called out Jake Sullivan from his blacksmith shop, his tone carrying that particular mix of pity and disdain she'd grown accustomed to. His eyes lingered too long, the way men's eyes did when they looked at a woman without protection. Sarah nodded curtly and quickened her pace. The clothes were due at the Patterson house, and Mrs. Patterson didn't tolerate tardiness. As she walked, she noticed more activity than usual in town. Armed riders congregated outside Sheriff Watson's office, their faces grim. "Seen any of them red devils lurking about, widow?" One of the riders, a man named Coleman with tobacco-stained teeth, called out as she passed. "Word is they've been spotted near Miller's Creek. Bold as brass. Them savages." Sarah's heart skipped, but she kept her expression neutral. "I've seen nothing. Mr. Coleman, you best keep your eyes open." He spat tobacco juice into the dust. "They're getting too comfortable, coming too close. Sheriff's organizing a patrol to run them off." The other men nodded, hands resting on their gun belts. Sarah recognized the look in their eyes. Fear mixed with bloodlust, a dangerous combination in frontier men. She hurried past, her mind racing. Miller's Creek was near where she gathered wood, near where Grey Wolf had saved her. At the Patterson house, Mrs. Patterson inspected each piece of clothing with the thoroughness of a general reviewing troops. "Acceptable," she finally declared, dropping coins into Sarah's palm. "Though I do wonder how you manage such work while gallivanting in the hills. Very unusual. Finding such a prize as that lion hide." "I was fortunate," Sarah said simply. "Fortunate." Mrs. Patterson's lips pursed. "A young woman alone is rarely fortunate in these parts. Perhaps you should consider Mr. Sullivan's offer of protection. He's mentioned his interest more than once." Sarah's stomach turned. Jake Sullivan's protection came with expectations she had no intention of meeting. "I manage well enough on my own, Mrs. Patterson. Pride goeth before a fall. Sarah Mackenzie, mark my words." Walking home, Sarah noticed the town felt different, tenser. Groups of armed men clustered on corners, speaking in low, urgent voices. Through the saloon's open doors, she heard angry talk of teaching those savages a lesson and taking back what's ours. The irony wasn't lost on her. This land had belonged to the Lakota long before Cedar Ridge existed, but such thoughts were dangerous to voice. That night, Sarah lay wakeful, listening to horses thundering past in the darkness. The patrol, riding out to defend the town from a threat that might exist only in their frightened minds. She thought of Grey Wolf, wondered if he knew about the patrols, if he was safe. 2 days passed in uneasy quiet. The patrol returned empty-handed but full of stories about tracks and signs, stoking the town's paranoia higher. Sarah kept to herself, taking in more laundry, mending clothes by candlelight, trying to ignore the growing tension that pressed against Cedar Ridge like a gathering storm. On the 3rd day, she could wait no longer. Her woodpile was genuinely low. She hadn't lied about that, and the need for fuel outweighed the risk. Or so she told herself, though she knew the truth was more complex. She needed to know if he was safe, needed to warn him about the patrols, if she could. She set out at dawn, before the town fully woke. The morning was crisp, frost glittering on the sage. Sarah followed a different path than before, circling wide around Miller's Creek where the patrol had focused their attention. Every shadow made her jump. Every bird call sounded like a warning. She was deep in the hills, gathering deadwood in a small clearing, when she sensed she wasn't alone. This time, she wasn't afraid. "You should not be here." Grey Wolf's voice came from behind her, quiet but urgent. Sarah turned slowly. He stood at the edge of the clearing, more tense than before, his rifle in hand. "I know. The town is agitated. They're sending out patrols." "We know." His dark eyes swept the surrounding forest. "My people have moved camp further north. You risk much coming here. I had to warn you." Sarah stopped, realizing how presumptuous that sounded. That is, I was concerned. Something softened in his expression. You were concerned. For me. You saved my life. The least you could do is stay away. But his tone held no real censure. He stepped into the clearing, still watchful. Your people will not understand. They will hurt you if they know. They're not my people, Sarah said, surprised by her own vehemence. Cedar Ridge tolerates me, nothing more. I'm useful for washing their clothes and mending their tears, but I'm not one of them. Grey Wolf studied her. You are bitter. I am honest. Sarah bent to gather more wood, needing something to do with her hands. My husband brought me here with dreams of a new life. The land killed him, and the town judges me for surviving without him. So no, they're not my people. Yet you stay. Where would I go? She straightened, meeting his gaze. At least here I have a roof, a way to earn bread. It's more than many have. They stood in silence for a moment, the forest alive with small sounds around them. Then Grey Wolf moved closer, reaching into a pouch at his belt. For you, he said, holding out something wrapped in soft leather. Sarah took it carefully, unwrapping it to reveal a small knife with a beautifully carved bone handle. Symbols she didn't recognize decorated its surface. I cannot take this, she breathed. It's too fine. It is practical, Grey Wolf corrected. Your knife is large, meant for a man's hand. This fits better, and... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. There are stories among my people, of a white woman who looks at us without hatred, who speaks of us as people, not animals. Such a woman should have proper tools. Sarah's throat tightened. People talk of me? A child from our camp was hiding near your town. Foolish boy. He heard you at the well, speaking to another woman. She said terrible things about my people. You defended us. Sarah remembered the incident, Mrs. Clark going on about bloodthirsty savages, while Sarah bit her tongue until finally she couldn't stay silent. She'd simply said that perhaps they were defending their land, just as any of them would. Mrs. Clark had stormed off in disgust. I only spoke truth. Truth is dangerous in your world. Grey Wolf's expression was serious. As dangerous as your presence here. You must go now. The patrols grow bolder. As if to underscore his words, the distant sound of horses carried on the wind. Both of them tensed. Go, Grey Wolf urged. Take the deer path down. It is hidden from the main trail. Sarah clutched the knife in her gathered wood. Are you leaving this area entirely? He hesitated. I scout for my people. Watch the movements of yours. I will be near, but you must not seek me out. It is too dangerous. Then how? If you have true need, he said quietly. Leave a white stone on the large rock where the path splits to go to water. I will find you, but only in true need. Sarah Mackenzie, your life depends on this. The sound of horses grew closer. Without another word, Grey Wolf melted into the forest. Sarah hurried to the deer path, her heart pounding. She was halfway down when she heard voices above the patrol, investigating the clearing she'd just left. She pressed herself against a boulder, hardly daring to breathe, as boots crashed through the underbrush overhead. See here, one voice called. Fresh tracks. Someone was here recent-like. Indian. Can't tell, but we best report it. Sarah waited until the sounds faded before continuing down the path. By the time she reached the edge of town, the sun was high and her nerves were frayed. She entered from a different direction, making it appear she'd been to the closer stands of cottonwoods. Jake Sullivan was waiting by her cabin. Where you been, Sarah? Gathering wood. She kept her voice steady. As you can see, his eyes narrowed. Dangerous times to be wandering alone. You hear we found signs up in the hills. I heard. Jake moved closer, and Sarah smelled whiskey on his breath despite the early hour. You need protection. A woman alone, it ain't natural. I could... Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, but I manage fine. His face darkened. Pride's an ugly thing in a woman. You'd best remember that. He stalked off, leaving Sarah shaking. Inside her cabin, she carefully hid the knife Grey Wolf had given her, wrapping it in cloth and placing it beneath a loose floorboard. As her fingers traced the carved symbols, she wondered at the turn her life had taken. A month ago, she'd been merely surviving, going through the motions of a half-lived life. Now she held a secret that could destroy her, a connection to someone the entire town would gladly see hanged. And despite the danger, despite the impossibility of it all, she felt more alive than she had since Thomas died. That night, as patrols rode out again and angry voices carried from the saloon, Sarah sat by her small fire and thought of dark eyes and gentle hands, of a man who saw her truly, who gave her gifts not to possess her, but to protect her. The wind rattled her windows like a warning. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, both literal and metaphorical. Sarah knew she stood at the edge of a precipice. One wrong step would send her tumbling into disaster. But as she prepared for bed, the small knife hidden but somehow still present in her awareness, she realized a terrible truth. She was already falling. The question was no longer whether to step back from the edge. The question was whether anyone would catch her when she fell. The first gunshots cracked through the air just after dawn, jolting Sarah from restless sleep. She scrambled to her window, peering through the frost-covered glass. Main Street erupted in chaos, horses thundering past, men shouting, women pulling children indoors. "Raiders!" someone bellowed. "They're hitting the bank!" Sarah's blood ran cold. She recognized some of the horses, the Jackson Gang, outlaws who'd been terrorizing settlements along the frontier for months. Through the swirling dust, she saw masked men hauling bags from the bank, while others fired wildly to keep the townspeople at bay. Sheriff Watson stumbled from his office, still pulling on his boots, only to dive back inside as bullets splintered the door frame above his head. Jake Sullivan crouched behind his water trough, firing back, but he was vastly outnumbered. A woman's scream pierced the air. Mrs. Morrison had been caught in the open, clutching her young daughter. One of the raiders spurred his horse toward them. Whether to trample or capture, Sarah couldn't tell. Then, impossibly, the raider jerked backward and tumbled from his saddle. No one in town had fired. The shot had come from somewhere else entirely. More shots followed, precise and deadly. Raiders fell or clutched wounded arms, their formation breaking apart. Sarah pressed closer to the window, searching for the source, and her heart nearly stopped. Grey Wolf stood on the roof of the livery stable, his rifle speaking with deadly accuracy. Two other Lakota warriors fired from different positions, creating a crossfire that sent the remaining outlaws into panicked retreat. "The Indians!" someone shouted. "The Indians are attacking!" "No!" Sarah whispered, watching Grey Wolf protect the very people who would see him hanged. "No, you fools! They're helping!" The surviving raiders fled in disorder, leaving their dead and wounded behind. An eerie silence fell over Cedar Ridge, broken only by the moaning of injured outlaws and the crying of frightened children. Grey Wolf and his companions remained visible for a moment longer, ensuring the threat had passed. Then they began to withdraw, moving to leave as quietly as they'd come. That's when Sarah saw Coleman raise his rifle, drawing a bead on Grey Wolf's back. "No!" She burst from her cabin, running into the street. "Don't shoot! They saved us!" Coleman's shot went wide as Sarah collided with his arm. He wheeled on her, face purple with rage. "What in the hell are you doing, woman?" "They saved Mrs. Morrison. They drove off the raiders." Sarah faced the gathering crowd, desperate to make them understand. "Didn't you see? They weren't attacking us. They were protecting us." "Protecting?" Coleman spat. "They're savages, probably in league with the raiders, trying to confuse us." "That's absurd." Sarah's voice rose. "Use your eyes. They shot the outlaws, not us." Sheriff Watson emerged, his weathered face grave. "She's right. Coleman, I saw it clear. Them Indians fired only on the Jackson Gang." "Don't mean nothing," another man growled. "Probably want us weak so they can attack later." Sarah looked around at the faces surrounding her, some confused, some thoughtful, but too many still twisted with hatred. On the livery roof, Grey Wolf had paused, watching, Even from this distance, she could feel his gaze on her. "They're leaving," she said quietly. "They saved us, and now they're leaving. Doesn't that tell you something, Mrs.?" Morrison stepped forward, her daughter still clutched in her arms. Her voice shook. "That Indian, he shot the man who was riding us down. My Emily would be dead if not for him." A murmur ran through the crowd. "Mrs." Patterson pushed to the front, her face pinched with disapproval. "And why, exactly, were those savages so conveniently nearby? How did they know to be here?" All eyes turned to Sarah. She felt the weight of their suspicion, the danger crackling in the air like lightning about to strike. "Does it matter?" she asked, meeting their stares steadily. "They helped us. That's what matters." "What matters?" Coleman snarled. "Is you defending them, almost like you knew they'd be here, almost like you've been meeting with them." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Sarah's mouth went dry. In the distance, Grey Wolf and his companions had vanished, but she knew he was still watching, waiting to see if he needed to return. "That's enough. Coleman." Sheriff Watson's voice carried quiet authority. "We got 3 dead outlaws and the bank's money is safe. I don't care if the devil himself helped make that happen." He looked around at the crowd. "Everyone go home. See to your families. We'll sort this out when heads are cooler." The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly. Many shot dark looks at Sarah as they passed. She stood her ground until the street emptied, then finally allowed her shoulders to sag. "You played a dangerous hand just now," Sheriff Watson said quietly, moving closer. "Coleman's a fool, but he's not the only one who'll be asking questions." Sarah met his gaze. "They saved lives today." "They did." The sheriff's eyes were knowing. "But that won't matter to most folks here. You'd best be careful. Mrs. Mackenzie, very careful." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone in the dusty street. She looked up at where Grey Wolf had been, knowing he was gone but feeling his presence still. Her defense of him had been instinctive, necessary, and possibly fatal to her standing in Cedar Ridge. She returned to her cabin to find Jake Sullivan waiting, his face dark with anger. "You made a fool of yourself out there," he said without preamble. "Defending those savages in front of the whole town. They saved lives." Sarah repeated wearily. Jake grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "You listen to me. I've been patient with you, Sarah, offered you protection, respectability, but my patience is running thin." She wrenched away. "I've asked for nothing from you. Every woman needs a man's protection out here. You're just too prideful to see it." His eyes glittered dangerously. "But pride won't protect you when the town turns on you. And after today's display, that turning's coming soon." After he left, Sarah barred her door and sank into a chair, shaking. The morning's events felt surreal, like something from a fever dream. Grey Wolf had risked everything to protect people who hated him, and she had revealed herself by defending him. That evening, she heard horses and voices outside. Peering through her window, she saw a group of men gathering, Coleman at their center. Their voices carried on the still air. "Can't be coincidence. Been acting strange for weeks. That lion hide she sold. Tomorrow we pay her a visit." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She recognized the tone, the mob mentality building like a storm. By tomorrow, they would come for her, demand answers she couldn't give, and when she couldn't satisfy them, she moved quickly, quietly, packed only essentials: food, water, blanket, the knife Grey Wolf had given her. As full darkness fell, she slipped out the back of her cabin and made her way to the edge of town. At the split in the path, she found the large rock and placed a white stone on top with trembling hands. Then she hid herself in a cluster of boulders to wait, praying he would come, praying he wouldn't. Hours passed. The moon rose, casting silver light across the landscape. Just when despair began to creep in, he was there, materializing from shadow like a spirit. "Sarah," his voice was urgent. "I saw what happened, what you did." "They're coming for me," she interrupted. Tomorrow. Coleman's organizing them. I can't stay." Grey Wolf's face was grave in the moonlight. "You defended us. Put yourself at risk. You saved the town. How could I do less?" He studied her for a long moment. "You cannot go back. You know this." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. Everything she had known, meager as it was behind her now. "I know. My people, they speak of you, the woman who sees truly. But to bring you to our camp—" He paused, struggling with something. "It is not simple. There are those who will not welcome you." "I understand." Sarah squared her shoulders. "But I can't stay here. I'll take my chances in the wilderness if I must." "No." The word came out sharp, then softer. "No, you will not face the wilderness alone." He looked back toward the town, then at her. "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Then we go now. There is a place, between worlds, between peoples. You can be safe there while we decide what must be done." As they moved into the darkness, Cedar Ridge sleeping behind them, Sarah took one last look at the cluster of buildings that had been her prison as much as her home. She thought of Thomas, of the dreams they'd shared, of the life that had died with him. But she also thought of the morning's violence, of Grey Wolf standing proud on that roof, defending people who despised him, of the choice she'd made in that dusty street, speaking truth when silence would have been safer. "You can't love that Lakota warrior." Coleman had sneered as the crowd dispersed. The words had been meant as accusation, as threat. He was right about one thing. She couldn't love Grey Wolf, not in this world that forbade such feelings, that would destroy them both for the mere suggestion of it. But as they vanished into the night together, her heart whispered dangerous truths. What the mind forbade and society condemned, the heart had already begun to choose. Behind them, Cedar Ridge slumbered on, unaware that come morning they would find the widow Mackenzie gone, her cabin empty, her choice made. The hunt would begin then, fueled by rage and righteous fury. But for now, there was only the night, the stars, and two figures disappearing into the vast Wyoming darkness, bound by an act of courage that had changed everything. The hidden valley lay cradled between towering pines, a secret pocket of the world where morning mist clung to the grass like scattered dreams. Sarah had been here 3 weeks now, in this place Grey Wolf called Between Worlds, a sheltered grove with a small cabin built years ago by a trapper who'd long since vanished into legend or death. She knelt by the stream, washing the shirt she'd worn when fleeing Cedar Ridge. The water ran ice cold over her hands, but she welcomed the sharp sensation. It reminded her she was alive, free. Even if that freedom came with a price she was still learning to calculate. A shadow fell across the water. She no longer startled when Grey Wolf appeared. She'd grown accustomed to his silent approaches. "You are troubled," he observed, crouching beside her. Sarah wrung out the shirt, watching the water drip back into the stream. "Coleman came through yesterday. I saw his riders from the ridge. They search still, but they will not find this place." Grey Wolf's confidence was reassuring, but Sarah caught something else in his tone. "What aren't you telling me?" He was quiet for a moment, then picked up a smooth stone, turning it in his fingers. "My people move camp tomorrow, further north, away from the soldiers who grow bolder." Sarah's heart sank. She'd known this day would come. "And you must go with them. I am their scout, their protector." He set the stone down carefully. "But you—" "I'll be fine here," Sarah said quickly. "You've left me supplies, shown me how to find food, how to read the weather signs. I can manage." Grey Wolf stood abruptly. "Come, I would show you something." They climbed the steep path behind the cabin, up to where the trees thinned and the whole valley spread below. The autumn colors were at their peak, gold aspens shimmering among the dark pines, the mountainsides ablaze with change. "Beautiful," Sarah breathed. "My grandmother brought me here when I was young," Grey Wolf said. "She said this was a place where the spirits of different worlds could meet without fear." He turned to her. "I have thought much these past days. About you. About us. The word hung between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Sarah's pulse quickened. "Grey Wolf?" "I know what cannot be," he continued. "Your people would hang us both. Mine would cast me out for bringing danger to the tribe. But knowing this does not change what is." "And what is that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He moved closer, his dark eyes holding hers. "That when I saw you defend my people in that street, my spirit recognized something it had been seeking without knowing, that every dawn I wake thinking of your safety, that leaving you here alone feels like tearing part of myself away." Sarah's carefully maintained composure crumbled. "You can't say such things. We can't." "Can't?" His hand rose to cup her face, gentle as his touch had been that first day. "The world tells us what we cannot do. But here, in this place between worlds, can we not speak truth?" She leaned into his touch, her own hand covering his. "The truth is that I've been lost since my husband died, going through the motions of living without feeling alive. Until a warrior appeared from the forest and showed me kindness when I expected violence, who gave me gifts not to possess me, but to protect me, who risked his life for people who hate him." Tears ran down her cheeks. "The truth is that my heart made its choice that first day, and every day since has only made that choice stronger." Grey Wolf's thumb brushed away her tears. Then, slowly, giving her time to pull away, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, a question as much as a declaration. Sarah answered by rising on her toes, her arms winding around his neck. For a moment, the impossible world faded away, leaving only them. Only this, when they parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "I must go with my people," Grey Wolf said, his voice rough. "But I will not leave you alone. There is a family French traders who married into the Crow tribe. They live 2 valleys over. Good people who judge no one. They would give you shelter, work, safety. And you? I will know where you are. When I can, I will come." He pulled something from his pouch, a small carved wolf, exquisite in its detail. "This was my father's. Keep it. When you hold it, know that you hold my promise to return." Sarah clutched the carving. "And if you can't, if the soldiers, or the winter, then you will make a new life with the traders. You will survive, because you are stronger than you know." His hand covered hers around the carving. "But I will do everything in my power to come back to you." That evening, they sat by the small fire in the cabin, sharing the simple meal Sarah had prepared. They spoke of everything and nothing, his childhood among the Lakota, her memories of life back east before Thomas had convinced her to chase frontier dreams. They laughed at small things, found joy in the ordinary miracle of conversation. But underneath ran an ache like a river, the knowledge that dawn would bring separation. "Tell me about your people's winter camps," Sarah said, wanting to picture where he would be. Grey Wolf described the sheltered valleys they favored, the way the lodges were arranged, the smoke of cook fires rising into cold, clear air. He spoke of hunting in deep snow, of stories told during the long nights, of children playing despite the hardships that pressed ever closer as white settlements expanded. "Do they know about me?" Sarah asked quietly. "Some suspect, my sister, White Dove, says I carry a new light in my eyes." He smiled slightly. "She is too perceptive. What would she think about this?" Grey Wolf was quiet for a long moment. She would worry, as I worry, but she would also understand that the heart does not always choose the safe path. Later, as the fire burned low, Sarah found herself memorizing everything, the way firelight played across his features, the graceful strength of his hands, the way his presence filled the small space with warmth and safety. "I'm afraid," she admitted suddenly. "Of what?" "Of tomorrow, of being without you, of the choice I've made." She looked at him directly. "But I'm not sorry. Whatever comes, I'm not sorry." Grey Wolf moved to sit beside her, drawing her against his side. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Fear is wisdom in the face of danger. he said softly. But you have faced fear before and not let it rule you. You will do so again. They stayed like that as the night deepened, neither wanting to waste precious hours in sleep. They spoke in whispers, sharing dreams and fears, building memories to sustain them through the separation ahead. As the first pale light touched the eastern peaks, Grey Wolf stirred. It is time. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She gathered the few things he'd brought for the journey: dried meat, a water skin, an extra blanket. Her hands shook only slightly. Outside, his horse waited patiently. The morning was crisp, the air so clear it seemed to ring like a bell. Grey Wolf secured his rifle and supplies, then turned back to her. The French traders are expecting you. Philippe and Marie Dubois. Tell them Grey Wolf sends you. They will understand. When will you— Sarah couldn't finish the question. When the snows are deep, my people shelter in one place. 2 moons, perhaps 3. I will find a way. He touched the carving she wore now on a leather cord around her neck. This is not goodbye. This is until I see you again. Sarah rose up and kissed him, pouring all her hope and fear and love into the contact. When they parted, she pressed something into his hand, a small square of fabric she'd embroidered during the quiet evenings, a white star on blue cloth. So, you remember that somewhere, someone waits for you, she said. He tucked it carefully inside his shirt, over his heart. Then he mounted his horse and looked down at her, his warrior's composure not quite hiding the emotion in his eyes. Be strong, Sarah Mackenzie. Be safe. Be careful, she whispered back. Come back to me. He nodded once, then turned his horse and rode away. Sarah stood watching until he disappeared into the trees. Then, long after, until the sun climbed high and her eyes burned from staring. Finally, she went back inside and began to pack her few belongings. Tomorrow she would make her way to the Dubois family, begin yet another new life among strangers. But today, she allowed herself to grieve the departure of the man who had awakened her heart. As she folded her worn dress, the small carved wolf swung against her chest. She clutched it, drawing strength from its solid presence. Somewhere out there, Grey Wolf carried her star. Whatever came next, winter, danger, the uncertain future, they carried pieces of each other in this wild, unforgiving land that seemed determined to tear them apart. It would have to be enough, for now. The Dubois trading post nestled in a bend of the river, smoke rising peacefully from its chimney into the December sky. Sarah had been here 2 months now, finding unexpected sanctuary with Philippe and Marie, whose warmth had eased the ache of separation. But today, that peace shattered like ice under spring sun. Sarah, come quick! Marie burst through the door, her usual calm face tight with worry. Riders from town, they ask questions about you. Sarah's blood chilled. She moved to the window, peering out carefully. 3 men sat their horses in the yard, talking to Philippe. Even from here, she recognized Jake Sullivan's bulky form. How did they find me? Marie's weathered hands gripped Sarah's shoulders. Someone must have talked. Maybe the hunter who trades with us. Maybe— She shook her head. No matter. You must hide. But even as Sarah turned to flee to the root cellar, she heard boots on the porch. Too late. The door banged open. Jake Sullivan filled the doorframe, his eyes lighting with cruel satisfaction when he saw her. Well, the runaway widow. You've led us quite a chase. Sarah. Philippe appeared behind him, his face apologetic but firm. Monsieur, this is my home. You will show respect. Jake ignored him, stepping inside. Coleman and another man, Harlan Mills, followed. 2 months we've been looking for you. 2 months since you betrayed your own kind for those savages. I betrayed no one, Sarah said, lifting her chin despite her terror. I spoke the truth. The truth? Coleman spat on the clean floor. The truth is you've been consorting with the enemy, Mrs. Patterson saw you leaving town that night, saw you meet with that red devil. That's enough. Philippe interjected. The lady works for us now. She has done nothing wrong. Jake's hand moved to his gun. Stay out of this, Frenchman. This is between us and her. He focused on Sarah again. You're coming back to Cedar Ridge. There's going to be a proper trial. A trial? Sarah laughed bitterly. You mean a lynching? Call it what you want. Justice needs doing. Jake moved closer. Though maybe we can work something out. You come back, act proper, accept my protection. Maybe folks will forget this foolishness. The thought of Jake's protection made Sarah's skin crawl. I'd rather die. His face darkened. That can be arranged too. Monsieur. Marie stepped forward, her small frame radiating quiet authority. You are 3 armed men threatening a woman. Where is your honor? Honor? Harlan Mills sneered. She gave up honor when she chose them over us. Choose your words carefully, Philippe warned, his hand drifting to the rifle mounted above the fireplace. You are outnumbered here. It was true. Several Crow men who worked with the trading post had materialized outside, watching silently. The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. We ain't leaving without her, Jake declared. Then you ain't leaving, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. An old mountain man stood there, rifle cradled casually in his arms. Sarah recognized him. Ezra Hawkins, who traded furs with the Dubois family. This ain't your concern, old man. Coleman growled. See, that's where you're wrong. Ezra spat tobacco juice past Coleman's boot. The lady's under the protection of the trading post. That makes it my concern, and the concern of every free trader in these mountains. More men appeared. Trappers, traders, even some Crow warriors. The Cedar Ridge men suddenly looked less confident. Jake's jaw worked furiously. You'd all stand with a traitor? We stand with a woman who's done no harm, Philippe said quietly. Now, you will leave, and you will not return. For a moment, violence hovered in the air like a waiting hawk. Then Jake stepped back, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. This isn't over, he promised. You can't hide forever, and that savage you're sweet on, we'll find him too. String him up like the animal he is. Sarah's hand went instinctively to the carved wolf at her throat. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. See? Coleman pointed. She wears his heathen trinkets. Out! Marie commanded. Before we forget we are civilized people. The 3 men retreated, Jake turning at the door for one last threat. The town council's put a price on your head. Sarah, $50 for information leading to your return. That's a lot of money out here. Remember that when you think you're safe. After they rode away. Sarah sank into a chair, shaking. Marie brought her hot tea laced with something stronger. They will not give up, Philippe said gravely. $50, that will tempt many. I've brought danger to your door, Sarah said. I should leave. Nonsense, Marie said firmly. You think we fear those cochons? We have faced worse. But Sarah could see the worry in their eyes. That night, she heard them talking quietly about the risk to their business, about the delicate balance they maintained between worlds. Her presence threatened everything they'd built. The next morning, she was packing when Ezra appeared at her door. Heard tell you might be thinking of running again, he said without preamble. I won't endanger the Dubois family further. Ezra studied her shrewdly. You always this prone to martyrdom? Or is it a recent development? Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. What would you have me do? Stay put, stay smart. Your man, and don't deny it. I've seen the sign he leaves when he checks on you. He'll come when he can. Running blind into winter won't help nobody. Sarah started. He checks on me. Course he does. Leaves markers only someone looking would spot. He knows about yesterday. Saw a fresh sign this morning. My guess is he's wrestling with whether to come in or keep his distance for your safety. Her heart leaped, then sank. He shouldn't come. It's too dangerous. That's his choice to make, not yours. Ezra fixed her with a stern look. You young folks think love means protecting each other from every harm. Sometimes it means standing together against the harm that comes anyway. That night, Sarah lay wakeful, Ezra's words echoing in her mind. Outside, snow began to fall. The first heavy storm of winter. Somewhere out there. Grey Wolf knew of the danger. Was he even now watching from the trees? Or had wisdom kept him with his people, safe from the trap her presence had become? She rose and went to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. The carved wolf hung warm against her chest, a tangible reminder that whatever the world said, her heart had made its choice. "Come back to me," she whispered to the swirling snow, "or let me find the strength to let you go." But even as she said it, she knew the truth. There was no letting go. Not of him, not of what they'd found in that brief, impossible time together. The world might condemn them, hunt them, try to tear them apart, but some choices, once made, could not be unmade. The storm intensified, hiding the world in white, and in that blinding veil, Sarah thought she glimpsed a shadow among the trees, still and watchful as a guardian spirit. Her heart quickened, but when she blinked, it was gone. Ghost or guardian, memory or presence, she couldn't say. But she touched the carved wolf and felt less alone. Whatever came with the dawn hunters or salvation, separation or reunion, she would face it. She had made her choice. Now she had to find the courage to live with it, whatever the cost. The wind howled around the trading post like a living thing, and Sarah Mackenzie, no longer widow but not yet free, stood sentinel at the window and waited for her fate to find her. The knock came just after midnight, soft but urgent. Sarah woke instantly, her hand going to the knife beneath her pillow. Marie's voice floated through the door, tense but reassuring. "Sarah, it's all right. You have a visitor." Heart pounding. Sarah wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and opened the door. Marie stood there with a lantern, her face carefully neutral. Behind her, snow-covered and haggard, stood Grey Wolf. "The storm provides cover," he said simply, but his eyes said everything his words did not. Sarah flew to him, not caring who saw. He caught her, holding her tight against his chest, and for a moment the danger and impossibility faded away. He was here. He was real. He was alive. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered against his shoulder. "They were here, Sullivan and Coleman. They're hunting for us both." "I know." He pulled back to look at her face, his thumb tracing the worry lines that hadn't been there 3 months ago. "That is why we must talk." Philippe appeared, ever practical. "Come, the back room is secure, and we have much to discuss." They gathered around a small table. Sarah, Grey Wolf, Philippe, Marie, and Ezra, who had materialized from wherever he kept watch. Grey Wolf accepted a cup of hot coffee gratefully before speaking. "The army is coming. A large force to establish a new fort. My people must move deeper into the mountains, into lands where the snows make pursuit difficult." He looked at Sarah. "I came to take you with me." Sarah's breath caught. "To your people?" "No. That would bring danger to them and death to us both." His jaw tightened. "There is another way. My mother's sister married a white man years ago, a minister who believed in peace between our peoples. They have a small settlement in the mountains, 3 days' ride. Both whites and natives live there. We could—" "A mixed settlement?" Philippe leaned forward. "I've heard rumors of such places, but it exists." Grey Wolf confirmed. "Hidden, protected by the mountains and by those who believe the future must hold more than hatred. You would be accepted there. Sarah, we both would." "It sounds like paradise," Marie said softly. "Too good to be true." "It is hard living," Grey Wolf admitted. "The winters are harsh, supplies limited, but there is no one to say who may love whom. No one to demand we be other than what we are." Sarah gripped his hand. "When would we leave?" "Now. Tonight. The storm will hide our tracks." He turned to the others. "I know the danger this brings you. If they discover you helped—" "Pah!" Ezra waved dismissively. "Let them try to prove anything in this blizzard. Far as anyone knows, she wandered off in the storm. Tragic loss." "I'll prepare supplies," Marie said, rising. "Food, blankets, ammunition. I have horses." Philippe added, "Strong mountain ponies that know harsh weather." As the others scattered to prepare, Sarah and Grey Wolf were left alone. She studied his face. seeing new lines of strain, a barely healed cut on his cheek. What happened? Soldiers attacked our hunting party. We drove them off, but he shook his head. It grows worse each season. My people talk of one last fight, one final stand. I cannot let you be caught in that. And your family, your sister, White Dove understands. She sends this. He pulled out a beautifully beaded pouch. For the woman who has captured her brother's spirit, she says, to keep you safe on the journey. Sarah's eyes burned with tears. I wish I could meet her, thank her. Perhaps someday. But they both knew how unlikely that was. Within an hour, they were ready. Sarah dressed in men's clothing, easier for riding. Marie insisted, with her few possessions and saddlebags. Grey Wolf had changed into less distinctive clothing, though he still moved with that fluid grace that marked him as a warrior. The farewells were brief but heartfelt. Marie pressed a small leather journal into Sarah's hands. Write to us when you can. Let us know you live. Philippe shook Grey Wolf's hand firmly. Take care of her. With my life, Grey Wolf replied. Ezra pulled Sarah aside. That settlement? I've been there once. Good people. But it ain't easy. You sure about this? Sarah touched the carved wolf at her throat. I'm sure. The old mountain man nodded. Then Godspeed. And Sarah? His weathered face cracked into a rare smile. You did good, standing by what's right. Don't let nobody tell you different. They rode out into the swirling snow. Two shadows quickly swallowed by the storm. Sarah had never ridden in such conditions. The cold bit through every layer. The wind tried to tear her from the saddle, and visibility was nearly zero. But Grey Wolf led with unwavering certainty, finding paths she couldn't see, reading signs in the chaotic white. They rode through the night, stopping only once to rest the horses in the shelter of an overhanging cliff. Grey Wolf built a small fire, coaxing flame from wood that seemed too wet to burn. They huddled close, sharing body heat in a thermos of Marie's strong coffee. Tell me about this settlement, Sarah said through chattering teeth. It began 10 years ago. Reverend Morrison? Yes, that Morrison. From your town, his brother James had different ideas about the future. He'd seen too much killing, lost friends on both sides, so he and his Lakota wife started a new place. Others came mixed families with nowhere else to go, whites who'd married into tribes, natives who'd been cast out for various reasons. And they survive. They trade carefully with both sides, remain neutral in conflicts. It's not perfect. There are those who would destroy it if they could, but the location protects them, and they protect each other. As dawn broke gray and bitter, they were climbing into the mountains proper. The storm had lessened but not stopped, which Grey Wolf said was good. Their tracks would be covered, but they could see the landmarks they needed. On the second night, they sheltered in a cave Grey Wolf knew. He'd cached supplies there, blankets, dried food, firewood. As warmth returned to her frozen limbs, Sarah realized he'd been planning this for some time. You knew I'd come with you, she said. He looked up from tending the fire. I hoped, but I would not have forced you. This life I offer, it's not what you deserve. What I deserve? Sarah moved to sit beside him. I deserve a man who sees me as I am, not as property or burden, who risks everything to offer me freedom. Who? Her voice broke. Who makes me feel alive again? Grey Wolf pulled her close. They sat in silence, watching the fire dance, both aware that each mile took them further from the world they'd known and closer to an uncertain future. Are you frightened? He asked finally. Terrified, Sarah admitted. But not of being with you, only of losing you. Then we face the fear together. He pressed his lips to her hair. As we will face whatever comes. The third day dawned clear and brutally cold. They were high in the mountains now, following paths that made Sarah's heart pound with vertigo. But as they crested a final ridge, Grey Wolf pointed ahead. There, do you see? In a sheltered valley below, smoke rose from a cluster of buildings. It looked like any small mountain settlement, except for the mix of traditional lodges alongside log cabins. the sight of children playing whose features spoke of mixed heritage. Paradise Valley, Grey Wolf said. Home to those who choose love over law. Sarah gazed down at what would be her new life. It was smaller than she'd imagined, more vulnerable looking. But as they descended and people emerged to greet them, faces curious but welcoming, she felt something ease in her chest. A woman approached, her face showing both native and European features. Grey Wolf, we heard you might come. She turned warm eyes on Sarah. And you must be the woman who defended our people in Cedar Ridge. Welcome, sister. As hands reached out in greeting and voices rose in welcome, Sarah realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Hard, uncertain, dangerous, but chosen freely. She looked at Grey Wolf, saw her own hope reflected in his eyes. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. In this valley where the impossible became possible, they would build something new. The world might condemn them, but here, in this hidden sanctuary, they could simply be. The spring thaw had come to Paradise Valley, turning paths to mud and filling the air with the sound of rushing water. Sarah knelt in the garden plot behind the cabin she shared with Grey Wolf, her hands deep in the dark soil, planting seeds that would sustain them through another year. 6 months here had changed her. Her hands were rougher, her face sun-kissed despite the winter, her body stronger from the hard work of mountain living. The peace was shattered by the sound of horses approaching fast. Sarah's blood chilled as she recognized the urgency in those hoofbeats. Grey Wolf appeared from the forest where he'd been checking trap lines, his face grim. Inside, he commanded. But Sarah was already moving. James Morrison, the settlement's leader, rode into view, followed by 2 scouts. His usual calm demeanor was fractured with worry. They've found us, a large party, maybe 20 men, coming up the South Trail. Sarah's heart sank. They'd always known this day might come, but 6 months of peace had made the threat feel distant, almost unreal. How long? Grey Wolf asked. 2 hours, maybe less. They're moving fast. James dismounted, his weathered face grave. It's not random. They're specifically looking for Sarah. Someone talked, maybe that trader who came through last month. The small settlement erupted into controlled chaos. Women gathered children. Men checked weapons. Everyone moving with the practiced efficiency of people who'd faced threats before. But this was different. This wasn't about the settlement's existence. It was about her. I'll leave, Sarah said immediately. Lead them away. They don't want the settlement. They want me. No. Grey Wolf's voice was steel. We stand together. He's right, said Anna Morrison. James's Lakota wife. You're one of us now. We don't abandon our own. But Sarah saw the fear in the eyes of mothers clutching their children. These people had risked everything to build this sanctuary. How could she let it be destroyed for her sake? The debate was cut short by a shout from the lookout. Riders! They're here! Sarah's stomach lurched as she recognized the lead rider, Jake Sullivan, his face twisted with triumph. Behind him rode Coleman and at least 15 others, all armed, all bearing the hard look of men bent on violence. James Morrison stepped forward, hands visible but near his rifle. This is private land. Gentlemen, you're not welcome here. Jake's laugh was ugly. Private land? This whole territory belongs to decent white folks, not race traders and their savage lovers. His eyes found Sarah, standing beside Grey Wolf. There she is, the runaway widow. Time to come home. Sarah, face justice for your crimes. My only crime was speaking truth, Sarah called out, and refusing your advances. Jake's face darkened. You chose a filthy redskin over your own kind. That's crime enough. The slur made Sarah's blood boil. His name is Grey Wolf. He's worth 10 of you. Is he now? Jake dismounted, his hand on his gun. Let's test that. I call him out, man to man. He wins. You all go free. I win. Sarah comes with us, and this nest of abomination gets burned to the ground. No. Sarah stepped forward, but Grey Wolf caught her arm. I accept, he said quietly. The settlement fell silent. James Morrison shook his head. "This isn't our way." "It's the only way," Grey Wolf interrupted. "He'll not leave otherwise, and more will die." Sarah gripped his arm desperately. "You can't. Jake fights dirty. I know." Grey Wolf turned to her, his dark eyes steady. "Trust me." The two men faced each other in the muddy ground between the buildings. Jake stripped off his coat, revealing 2 pistols. Grey Wolf carried only one, the rifle he'd set aside. "To the death?" Jake asked, grinning. "If necessary," Grey Wolf replied. They stood 20 paces apart. Anna Morrison, tears streaming down her face, counted down. 3, 2, 1. Jake drew first, his speed impressive, but Grey Wolf moved like water, flowing aside as the bullet whined past. His own draw was smooth, controlled. The shot took Jake in the shoulder, spinning him around, but Jake had a second gun. As he fell, he pulled it, aiming not at Grey Wolf but at Sarah. "No!" Grey Wolf threw himself between them. The bullet caught him in the side, sending him to his knees. Sarah screamed, rushing to him. Blood spread across his shirt, his face already paling. But his eyes found hers, full of love and determination. "My heart," he whispered, had already made its choice. Jake, wounded but not dead, raised his gun again. This time, Sarah was faster. The small knife Grey Wolf had given her so long ago flew from her hand, burying itself in Jake's wrist. He dropped the gun with a howl. The standoff erupted. Coleman and the others went for their weapons, but the settlement was ready. Rifles appeared from windows, behind water barrels, from positions on the roofs. The attackers found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. "Hold!" James Morrison's voice rang out. "Enough blood has been spilled. You men have a choice. Leave now. Take your wounded, and never return, or die here, today, for nothing more than hatred." The silence stretched taut. Sarah cradled Grey Wolf's head in her lap, pressing desperately on his wound. His blood was warm on her hands, too much of it. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave me, not now." His hand covered hers, weak but present. "Strong, you are strong." Coleman looked at his fallen leader, at the rifles trained on them, at the determination in the faces surrounding them. Something shifted in his expression, not acceptance, but recognition of defeat. "Get Sullivan," he ordered. "We're leaving." They loaded Jake, cursing and threatening, onto his horse. As they prepared to ride out, Coleman turned back. "This isn't over. The law—" "The law?" James Morrison laughed bitterly. "What law protects love? What law says a man and woman can't choose each other? Your law is nothing but dressed-up hatred. Now get out, before we forget we're trying to be better than you." The riders left, their retreat watched by every eye in the settlement. Only when they were gone did Sarah allow herself to sob, bending over Grey Wolf's still form. "No, no, no," she chanted. "You can't die. Not for me. Not like this." But Anna Morrison was there, her hands surprisingly gentle as she examined the wound. "He lives. The bullet passed through, with care, with time. He will heal." The next hours blurred together. Grey Wolf was carried to their cabin, the wound cleaned and dressed. Sarah never left his side, holding his hand, speaking to him constantly, as if her voice could anchor him to life. The fever came, as they'd feared. For 3 days, he burned and thrashed, calling out in Lakota, in English, always her name threading through the delirium. Sarah bathed his face, forced water between his lips, prayed to any power that might listen. On the 3rd night, as rain drummed on the roof, his eyes opened clearly. "Sarah," she wept then, great gasping sobs of relief. I'm here, my love." Did we win?" "Yes." She kissed his forehead, his cheeks, careful of his weakness. "They're gone. The settlement is safe." "And you? I'm where I belong, where I'll always belong." "Right here with you," he smiled. that rare, precious expression that transformed his warrior's face. My heart, it chose well. Later, as Grey Wolf slept peacefully and Sarah kept watch, James Morrison came to sit with her. They'll be back, he said quietly. Maybe not Sullivan, but others. This place, it challenges everything they believe. They won't let it stand forever. Sarah nodded. I know, and I'm sorry for bringing this trouble to you. Don't be. James looked out the window at the settlement, where people were already repairing damage, going about their lives. Every person here came because the outside world said their love was wrong. Mixed couples, different faiths, different colors. We all carry the same burden, stand against the same hatred. He rose to leave, then paused. But today we stood together. Today we said that love is worth fighting for. That's no small thing. Sarah Mackenzie, after he left, Sarah curled carefully against Grey Wolf's uninjured side. Outside, the rain was ending, stars appearing between the clouds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The threat wasn't over, might never be truly over, but they'd won this day, won the right to be together, to build a life, to love without apology. Grey Wolf's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently, and Sarah knew, with bone-deep certainty, that whatever came next, they would face it as they'd faced today, together. The summer sun painted Paradise Valley in shades of gold and green. 2 years after the confrontation that had nearly torn their sanctuary apart, Sarah stood at the edge of the meadow, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where new life grew. The carved wolf pendant, now polished smooth by constant wear, hung between her breasts, a reminder of how far they'd come. Grey Wolf emerged from the tree line, moving with his old grace despite the slight hitch in his step where Jake's bullet had left its mark. In his arms, he carried wildflowers, purple lupine and Indian paintbrush, their private ritual from the early days of their love. For the most beautiful woman in the mountains, he said, presenting them with mock formality. Sarah laughed, accepting the bouquet. Flatterer. You know Mary Buckwater just had her baby? She glows like sunrise. Perhaps, but she is not my sunrise. He placed his hand over hers on her belly. How is our little warrior today? Active. I think she takes after her father, always moving, never still. She? Grey Wolf raised an eyebrow. So certain? A mother knows. Sarah leaned into his embrace, watching the settlement's children play in the meadow. Several were mixed blood, like theirs would be, living proof that love could transcend the boundaries others tried to impose. The sound of approaching horses made them both tense, old habits dying hard. But it was only Philippe Dubois, leading a packed train of supplies. The French trader had become their lifeline to the outside world, bringing news and necessities while keeping their location secret. Mes amis, Philippe called out. I bring gifts and gossip from the lowlands. They gathered in the main lodge that evening, the entire settlement coming together as they did each time Philippe visited. Marie had sent preserves and cloth. Ezra had sent ammunition and tools, and there were letters from the few who knew and supported their choice. But Philippe's expression grew serious as he shared the news. There are changes coming. The government speaks of new policies toward the native peoples. Reservations. They call them places where all Indians must go or be considered hostile. A murmur of concern rippled through the gathering. Many here had native blood, lived in the traditional ways alongside the newer customs. What would such policies mean for Paradise Valley? James Morrison stood. We've faced challenges before. We'll face this one too. This settlement exists because we refuse to accept that people must live separately. That won't change. Grey Wolf spoke quietly, but his words carried, the world outside grows harder for my people. Many chiefs speak of surrender, of accepting the reservations to save the children. Others speak of one last fight. He looked at Sarah. I have chosen a different path. Here, in this valley, we show another ways possible. This is my fight now, to prove that we can live as one people. Anna Morrison nodded. My husband's brother in Cedar Ridge writes that opinions are changing. The raid 2 years ago, When Grey Wolf protected the town, some remember, some question the old hatreds. Not enough, someone muttered. No, Anna agreed. But some, and from small seeds, great trees grow. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Sarah and Grey Wolf walked to their favorite overlook. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of rose and amber. Below them, Paradise Valley spread out like a promise, small but thriving, vulnerable but determined. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked suddenly, "leaving your people for this uncertain life?" Grey Wolf was quiet for a long moment. "My people are scattered now. Many have gone to the reservations. Others fight battles they cannot win. But here," he gestured to the valley, "here I fight a different battle, for the right of our child to exist, for the truth that love knows no color." Sarah touched her belly again. In a few months, their child would enter a world that had no place for them, neither fully white nor fully native, belonging to both and neither. But here in Paradise Valley, they would simply be loved. "I saw something today," Grey Wolf said, pulling a letter from his pocket. "Philippe brought this. It's addressed to you." Sarah recognized the handwriting immediately. Mrs. Morrison, not Anna, but the banker's wife from Cedar Ridge. With trembling hands, she opened it. "My dear Sarah," it read, "I hope this letter finds you well. You may be surprised to hear from me, given our past disagreements, but time and tragedy have a way of changing hearts. My own son ran away last winter, said he couldn't bear the narrow-mindedness of our town. It opened my eyes to the pain our judgments cause. I write to tell you that not all in Cedar Ridge condemn you. Some of us have formed a small group, working to build bridges instead of walls. We remember how the Lakota warrior saved our town. We question why love should be a crime. I do not ask where you are or that you return. I only wanted you to know that seeds of change have been planted even here. Perhaps one day, the world our children inherit will be different from the one we've known. With respect and regret for past harshness, Abigail Patterson." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "I never thought she was so cruel before. People can change," Grey Wolf said. "Not all, not quickly, but some, as if summoned by their hope." A cry went up from the settlement, riders approaching, but these were expected. White Dove, Grey Wolf's sister, led a small group of Lakota, including some who'd chosen the difficult path of trying to live between worlds. The reunion was joyful and tearful. White Dove embraced Sarah like a true sister, her hands immediately going to Sarah's pregnant belly with delight. She'd brought gifts, a cradle board decorated with both Lakota and European designs, a perfect symbol for the child to come. That night, the settlement celebrated. Lakota songs mixed with European melodies. Traditional dances shared space with frontier reels. Children of all backgrounds played together while adults shared food and stories. Sarah found herself standing with White Dove, watching their loved ones. Grey Wolf was deep in conversation with James Morrison and the Lakota elders, planning ways to help more mixed families find sanctuary. "You make my brother happy," White Dove said simply. "In the old days, I would have resented you for taking him from us. But I see now he isn't lost to us. He built something new. We build it together," Sarah corrected. "All of us." As the evening wound down, Grey Wolf found Sarah, pulling her into a dance. Around them, their chosen family celebrated, native and white, mixed and pure, all bound by the radical belief that love mattered more than law. "My heart," Grey Wolf murmured as they swayed together. "It seems so long ago that you stood in that dusty street and defended my people. Do you remember what they said? 'You can't love that Lakota warrior,'" Sarah quoted, smiling. "But they were wrong. Were they?" His eyes twinkled. "Perhaps they spoke truth without knowing. You can't love that Lakota warrior. You must love him, as he must love you, as the sun must rise and the seasons must turn." Sarah laughed, the sound bright as mountain water. Philosophy from a warrior. Love makes philosophers of us all. As the celebration continued around them, Sarah thought of the journey that had brought them here, the fear, the flight, the fights for survival, the moments of doubt when the world's hatred seemed too heavy to bear, but also the moments of grace, strangers who helped, hearts that changed, love that endured. Their child would be born into a world still struggling with prejudice, but they would also be born into Paradise Valley, where Lakota lullabies and European fairy tales would weave together in their dreams, where they would learn that courage meant standing for truth, and that love was the greatest rebellion of all. The stars emerged overhead, brilliant in the clear mountain air. In the main lodge, voices rose in an old Lakota prayer song, adapted to include words of hope from many traditions. Sarah and Grey Wolf stood together, hands clasped, hearts united, facing whatever future would come. They had chosen love over law, understanding over ignorance, hope over fear. And in this hidden valley where impossible things became possible, they had found their home. The world outside might condemn them still, but here, tonight, with their child growing between them and their chosen family around them, Sarah Mackenzie and Grey Wolf stood as proof that the human heart, once awakened to love, could overcome any barrier placed before it. In the distance, wolves howled, not a threat but a blessing, a reminder that wild things could survive and thrive despite those who would tame or destroy them. Sarah touched the carved wolf at her throat one more time, then turned to face the celebration, her warrior beside her, their future unwritten but bright with possibility. Love had made its choice, and in Paradise Valley, that choice would echo through generations, a testament to the power of two hearts that refused to be divided by the artificial lines others drew. The story of the widow and the warrior would be told around fires for years to come, a reminder that in the hardest of lands, under the harshest of laws, love remained the one force that could not be conquered. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. If you've enjoyed following Sarah and Grey Wolf's journey, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps these tales of the American frontier reach more listeners around the globe.